Hey everyone, it's your boy Anime Issei, and today we're diving into another epic what if. This time, we're exploring what if Issei was the reincarnation of Ryo, Fist of the North Star. Chapter 1, The Last Breath of a Conqueror. The battlefield was silent. Crimson clouds blanketed the sky, casting a heavy gloom over the broken earth. The cries of battle had long faded. Now only two figures stood amidst the wreckage, each battered and blood-stained. Ryo, the conqueror, stood tall despite the wounds that marred his body. His chest rose and fell heavily, blood dripping from his knuckles. In the distance, Kenshiro, the successor of Hokuto Shinken, watched him with sorrow in his eyes. Kenshiro, quietly, "Ryo, it's over. You don't have to fight anymore." Ryo smiled, not out of hatred, but out of pride. His body trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of a life lived with unstoppable will. Ryo, with a deep, echoing voice, "My life was one of conquest. My fists shaped the world. Even now, even at death's door, I regret nothing." He stepped forward, blood trailing behind him with each staggering step. With a final roar that shook the heavens, Ryo raised his hand toward the dark sky. Ryo, shouting with all his might, "I leave this world with no regrets. My spirit will rise beyond the stars." A blinding light exploded from his body, shaking the earth itself. It was not death. It was ascension, the spirit of a king refusing to kneel even in his final moment. His body collapsed, but his soul, burning bright and defiant, soared into the heavens. Years later, in a quiet suburb of Japan, a new life stirred. In a small hospital room, the cries of a newborn child filled the air. His parents, Goru and Miki Hayadu, wept tears of joy as they cradled their son. Doctor smiling, "Congratulations. It's a healthy boy." The child opened his eyes, and for a brief second, the nurses in the room paused. His gaze was intense, almost unnaturally so, as if he carried the wisdom of 1,000 battles behind those innocent pupils. Goru Hayadu, laughing nervously, "Whoa. Look at that glare. He's going to be a tough one, huh?" Miki Hayadu, smiling warmly, "He's perfect." They named him Issei Hayadu, but deep inside that tiny, fragile body, the soul of the conqueror of the centuries slept, waiting for the day he would rise once more. The sleeping giant awakens. The years passed. At first, Issei Hayadu seemed like any normal boy in Kuo town, loud, curious, and sometimes a bit reckless. He scraped his knees on playgrounds, chased after ice cream trucks, and played video games until his mom yelled at him to go to bed. But there was something different about him, something that made adults pause when he walked into a room. At just 5 years old, he had a presence far beyond his age, an invisible gravity that made even bullies second-guess picking on him. One day at the park, little Issei sat on a bench, his arms crossed, watching a group of older kids push around a boy half their size. His friend, a chubby kid named Yuto, tugged at his sleeve. Yuto, nervous, Issei, maybe we should go. They're bigger than us." Issei didn't move. He simply watched, his eyes cold, calculating. Yuto, whispering again, "Come on, we'll get hurt." Finally, Issei stood up small, but somehow towering in that moment. He walked toward the scene without hesitation. The biggest of the bullies laughed when he saw him. Bully grinning, "What do you want, shorty? You want to get pushed around too?" Issei stopped a few feet away. He tilted his head slightly, studying them. Issei, calm but sharp, "You're in my way." The bully sneered, and the leader lunged forward to shove him. In a blink, Issei moved. His tiny fist slammed into the older kid's stomach, not hard enough to seriously hurt him, but with surgical precision. The bully dropped to his knees, gasping for air, his face turning red. The other kids froze. Issei didn't even look at them. He turned to the kid they were bullying. Issei, offering a hand. "Stand up. No one bows to trash." The boy took his hand, shaking with fear and awe. The bully scrambled away, without another word. Yuto, wide-eyed, "Issei, you're scary sometimes, you know." Issei shrugged and walked away, his hands in his pockets. Somewhere deep inside him, a forgotten memory stirred. the memory of standing on battlefields, commanding armies, with nothing but his will. He didn't understand it yet, but part of him knew. Power wasn't for bullying the weak. Power was to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Later that night at home, Issei stared out his bedroom window at the moon, a strange uneasiness settling in his chest. He touched his own hand, clenching and unclenching his fist. Issei, whispering to himself, "Why does it feel like I'm waiting for something?" He didn't know it yet, but the sleeping giant within him was slowly waking. The spirit of Reo, the man who dared to conquer fate itself, was stirring once more. The rebirth of a king. Time skipped. Years later, the boy was gone. In his place stood a young man, a towering figure among his peers. At Kuo Academy, Issei Hayate was known, but not in the way most boys were. He wasn't a clown. He wasn't chasing skirts. He wasn't even interested in their whispers and giggles. He was a force, a presence that made people instinctively step aside when he walked by. The teachers respected him. The delinquents avoided him. Even the so-called popular students chose their words carefully around him. One morning, walking to school, the sun rose lazily over Kuo town, painting the sky in soft orange hues. Issei walked alone, his hands tucked into his blazer pockets, his heavy boots crunching against the gravel. Other students gathered in groups, laughing, gossiping, living simple lives. Issei barely paid them any mind. Issei, thinking quietly, "This world, it's soft. Too soft. No one understands true strength." He paused near the school gates. A group of delinquents, older students with dyed hair and piercings, were pushing around a freshman boy, laughing, mocking him. One of the delinquents noticed Issei watching and sneered. Delinquent mocking. "What? You want to play hero, Hayate?" The others laughed. Issei slowly approached. Each step he took felt heavy, measured. The leader of the group stood his ground, until Issei locked eyes with him. Those eyes, cold, sharp, unmoving, carried the weight of a king who had walked across oceans of blood. Issei, deep, controlled voice. "Leave him. Now." The leader chuckled nervously and tried to save face. Delinquent. "Yeah. Or what?" In less than a second, Issei closed the distance. His hand seized the punk by the collar and lifted him slightly off the ground without effort. Issei calm, without raising his voice. "There's no what. Only my will." He tossed the delinquent aside like a rag doll. The others ran without a second thought. The freshman boy stared up at him in awe. Freshman stammering. Thank you." Issei didn't answer. He simply turned and continued walking toward the school building, as if the entire event meant nothing. Inside Kuo Academy, later that day. In class, Issei sat near the window, his chin resting on his hand, gazing out at the open sky. Girls whispered about him behind their hands. Boys admired him, but kept their distance. Girl 1 whispering, "Hayate-kun is so scary, but kinda cool." Girl 2 whispering, "He's like a warrior or something, not like the other guys." Issei heard them, but he didn't react. He was above petty gossip. His mind was elsewhere. On distant storms he could feel brewing on the horizon. Somehow he knew. This peaceful world wouldn't last forever. And when it crumbled, he would rise to conquer whatever chaos came. Because that's who he was. Not a clown. Not a fool. But a king born again. The conqueror of the century's end, reborn as Issei Hayate. The quiet storm. Kuo Academy thrived on normalcy. Students went about their daily routines, studying, laughing, dreaming about college, about romance, about things Issei Hayate had long since stopped caring about. In his mind, he was preparing for something greater, something he couldn't name yet, but felt coming like thunder beyond the hills. One day, lunchtime, Issei sat alone under a tree at the edge of the courtyard, eating a simple lunch of rice and chicken, surrounded by silence. A few brave students occasionally glanced his way, but none dared approach him. They felt it, the same way animals sense a predator nearby. It wasn't that Issei was cruel. It was that he was untouchable. He preferred it that way. A soccer ball rolled to a stop by his foot. 2 first-year students came running after it, laughing, until they saw who it had landed near. They froze like statues. Issei finished chewing his food, stood up, and calmly kicked the ball back toward them with perfect aim. Issei simply, "Play far from me." The boys nodded frantically and sprinted off. He sat back down without another thought. In the distance, hidden behind a school window, someone watched him. Unknown location, within Koho Academy. In a darkened room, filled with old tomes and ancient symbols, a mysterious figure observed Issei through a crystal orb. A woman, her crimson hair flowing over her shoulders like blood, narrowed her eyes. Muttering to herself, "That boy, what is he? His aura. It's not human, yet not devil either." She waved her hand, and the orb went dark. Another figure, a young man in glasses, stood nearby, arms folded. "Glasses man, should we make contact?" The woman shook her head. "Serious? No, not yet. He is not ready, and neither are we." Unbeknownst to Issei, the supernatural world had begun to turn its gaze upon him, but he remained in blissful ignorance for now. He had no idea of devils, angels, fallen, or sacred gears. Only the quiet call inside him, the voice of conquest, urging him to grow stronger, to prepare for a war he could not yet see. Later that night, on his way home, the sky was an ocean of black, dotted with stars. Issei walked alone through the streets, his school bag slung over one shoulder. A group of thugs, fresh out of some cheap arcade, noticed him. They were drunk on sugar and ego. Thug 1 grinning, "Hey, look at this guy, thinking he's too good for the world." Thug 2 laughing, "Let's teach him some respect." They surrounded him. Issei didn't even stop walking. Thug 3 mocking, "Oi, we're talking to you." Finally, Issei spoke, calm, like a teacher explaining something obvious. Issei low and cold, "You're insects. You don't command the lion's attention." The lead thug lunged at him. In a single motion, without breaking stride, Issei's hand moved, grabbing the attacker's wrist and squeezing. There was a sickening crack. The thug dropped to the ground, howling in pain. The others scattered in terror. Issei didn't even look back. Issei, thinking as he walked, "Pathetic. The strong have a duty to rule. The weak, to be protected or left behind." The night wind carried his heavy steps toward the unknown future. Above him, hidden in the clouds, unseen eyes watched. But even they dared not interfere yet. The conqueror walked alone, and the world would soon tremble at his awakening. Shadows beneath the moonlight. After school, sunset. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a blood-red glow across Koho town. Issei Hayato walked the familiar path home, the weight of his school bag resting easily against his back. As he passed through a quiet park, he sensed it. A presence. A soft, almost shy voice called out, "Gentle. Excuse me, are you Hayato Issei?" He turned. There she stood, a beautiful girl with flowing black hair and delicate features. Her uniform was pristine, her smile almost painfully sweet. Yuma Amano. Most boys would have been enchanted instantly, but not Issei. He narrowed his eyes slightly, not moving. Issei bluntly, "I am. And you are." She blinked, almost surprised by his cold tone. Yuma, fidgeting shyly, "And my name's Yuma Amano. I've been watching you for a while now, and I was wondering if you'd go out with me." She bowed her head, cheeks flushed with fake embarrassment. A normal boy would have exploded with joy. Issei stood silent, his gaze heavy, studying her. He could feel it. Something unnatural about her aura. It was faint, like a whisper behind her words. Issei thinking, deception. She hides something, but why? Does she take me for a fool? He stepped closer, towering over her by a head. Yuma stiffened slightly, though she tried to hide it. Issei cold, commanding. Why me? She hesitated. Yuma, forcing a nervous giggle. Be because you're kind. And cool. And I just like you. Her words were rehearsed. Issei could tell. Still, he smirked slightly. Not in joy, but in amusement. Issei. Fine. Her eyes widened in fake excitement. Yuma. Oh, really? Issei turned away and began walking. Issei, without looking back. Meet me here tomorrow night. Bring your true face with you. The words hit her like a slap. She faltered, her mouth opening slightly, but no words came out. Issei didn't care. He was already leaving, his long strides carrying him away from the park. High above, watching, from a nearby rooftop, cloaked in shadow, a figure watched the entire scene. A young man in a black suit, fedora low over his face, clicked his tongue in annoyance. Mysterious man grumbling. TCH. That girl picked the wrong prey. He melted back into the night, unseen. Issei's room, later that night. Issei sat on his bed, arms crossed, staring out the window at the moon. The world was shifting. He could feel it. Issei thinking. The wind smell of blood and treachery. Good. Let them come. His lips curved into a faint, almost cruel smile. The king was ready. The night of reckoning, park of betrayal. The wind whispered low through the abandoned park as Issei Hayato stood motionless beneath the broken streetlight. The air was heavy, dense, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Issei no, Ryo's reincarnation, had sensed the lie from the start. There was no date, only betrayal. And now he waited, patient, silent. Soft footsteps echoed behind him. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. Yuma Amano, or whatever her true name was, approached with a forced, sugary smile. Yuma, playfully. Sorry if I'm late. Issei said nothing. His eyes, cold and sharp, stared into the distance. Yuma, voice trembling slightly. So, you're not mad, right? Still no answer. Her smile twitched. She dropped the act. Suddenly, the air shattered. Black wings burst from her back, her school uniform ripping apart. The streetlight overhead exploded with a crack of electricity. In her hand, a spear of light formed, glowing, humming with killing intent. Rainier mocking. You're smarter than the others, but not smart enough. Without another word, she hurled the spear at Issei's heart. Issei didn't even blink. At the last second, his body shifted. The light spear flew past him, missing by less than an inch and stabbing into the concrete behind him. A thin line of blood trailed down his side, where the spear had grazed him. He glanced at the wound, then slowly raised his eyes to her. Unfazed, unimpressed. Issei cold, thunderous, pathetic. Rainier's face twisted in rage. Rainier screeching. Die. She conjured 3 more spears and launched them with all her might. Issei moved like a storm unleashed. He weaved between the first 2, then caught the third with his bare hand. The spear of light struggled in his grip like a living thing, until he crushed it to nothing with a simple squeeze. Rainier flinched in terror. Before she could retreat, Issei was upon her. In a blur of speed and power, he leapt into the air, closing the distance in a heartbeat. He grabbed her throat midair, lifting her easily off the ground. Rainier, choking, panicked. Let go. She thrashed wildly, her black wings beating frantically. Her hands clawed at his iron grip. Issei's expression never changed. No anger, no pity, only the cold judgment of a king. Slowly, methodically, he reached out with his free hand. He seized the base of her left wing. Rainier, eyes widening in horror. No. Crack. With a vicious pull, Issei ripped her wing clean off. A fountain of black feathers and blood erupted into the air. Rainier's scream pierced the night, raw and agonized. He released her throat, letting her crash painfully onto the ground, gasping and sobbing. She clutched her mangled shoulder, writhing in the dirt. Rainier broken, shaking. M-monster. Issei dropped the severed wing onto the ground beside her like discarded trash. He stood over her, towering, a titan among insects. His voice was low, deep, and heavy with absolute authority. Issei cold, final. You are no angel, only a crow that forgot its place. He raised his hand, ready to finish it. Suddenly, a massive red magic circle flared beneath him. Chains of energy erupted from the ground, coiling around his arms, legs, chest, pulling, dragging. Issei gritting his teeth. TCH. Even as the chains bound him, his presence didn't waver. He turned his burning gaze on Rainier one last time. Issei commanding like a death sentence. I will remember you. Her heart nearly stopped under that gaze. And then, the ground opened beneath Issei. The chains yanked him down into darkness. Rainier collapsed fully onto the ground, sobbing in pain and fear. Broken. Defeated. Rainier, whispering to herself in terror. What I Issei? Unknown dungeon later. Stone walls. Flickering torches. Ancient sigils glowed faintly on the floor. Issei awoke, lying on cold stone. He sat up slowly. No panic. No confusion. Only calm, simmering rage. A man in priest robes approached, carrying a heavy book. Mysterious priest. Good, you're awake. You, boy, are far too valuable to kill just yet. Issei stared at him. Silent. Judging. Issei, thinking, cold and absolute. Cage me if you wish. It changes nothing. He flexed his fingers lightly, feeling his strength returning. He would endure. He would break free. And when he did, the world would kneel. Chains cannot hold a king. Unknown dungeon, hours later. The cold dungeon echoed with the faint drip of water from the stone ceiling. Torches flickered, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. In the center of the room, Issei sat chained. Heavy iron shackles bound his wrists, ankles, and even his neck, each inscribed with ancient runes meant to drain strength, suppress magic, and break the will of normal beings. The priests thought it would be enough. They thought they could cage him like a beast. They thought wrong. Footsteps approached. The dungeon door creaked open. 2 priests entered, carrying staves crackling with binding spells. One sneered arrogantly. Priest number 1 mocking. Still so quiet, little demon? You will learn your place soon enough. Priest number 2, laughing. Maybe we should start carving holy seals into his flesh. See how long he stays silent then. They chuckled cruelly, stepping closer. Issei, sitting in the dark, slowly raised his head. For the first time since he'd been imprisoned, he smiled. Not a smile of kindness. Not a smile of fear. A conqueror's smile. The priests froze instinctively, something primal screaming inside them. Issei, voice low, calm. You have mistaken my silence for submission. The room temperature dropped. The very air grew heavier, harder to breathe. The chains around Issei's arms creaked, straining under invisible pressure. The priests raised their staves in panic, trying to activate their spells. Too late. With a roar that shook the walls, Issei stood. Chains snapped like twigs, the ancient magic shattering under the weight of his sheer willpower. The rune-etched shackles around his wrists burst apart, raining metal fragments onto the ground. The priest stumbled backward in terror. Priest number 1, screaming. He broke the seals. Priest number 2, panicking. That's impossible. Issei took a step forward. The ground cracked under his foot. The priests raised their staves, trying to cast spells, but their hands were shaking too violently. Issei moved like a storm. In one brutal motion, he grabbed priest number 1 by the throat, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. Issei, cold. You are nothing. He threw the priest against the stone wall. The impact was so violent that the man slumped to the ground, unconscious, possibly worse. The second priest turned to flee. He barely made it 2 steps before Issei's hand slammed into his back with crushing force, sending him sprawling face first into the floor. Issei loomed over him. Issei, dark whisper. Run from me. Run from your king. He left the priest groaning on the ground, broken in body and spirit. Moments later, the outer halls. The fortress was in chaos. Alarm bells rang as armored guards scrambled to block the exits. Spellcasters chanted hurriedly, summoning barriers of light to block the hallways. It didn't matter. Issei walked through them like a hurricane. He ripped through the guards, sending them flying like ragdolls. He shattered the magic barriers with his fists alone, each punch unleashing raw, kingly force. Guard captain, shouting desperately, "Focus your spells. We can't let him escape." Issei, interrupting, voice booming across the halls. You cannot cage the sky. You cannot chain destiny. He punched the stone wall beside him, and the entire corridor collapsed in a shower of debris, burying the guards in rubble. Without even glancing back, Issei stepped through the destruction, his path clear. Outside night sky, the fortress doors exploded outward. Issei stepped into the cool night air, the full moon illuminating him from above. His clothes were torn, stained with blood and dust, but his posture, unbroken, majestic, like a titan who had crushed the heavens and claimed the earth. The wind swirled around him, carrying the scent of freedom. He inhaled deeply, savoring it. Issei, thinking, quiet but full of fire. This world has forgotten what it means to kneel. He looked toward the distant city skyline, where Kuo Academy waited, where a false peace ruled, where new challengers, new foes, and new trials awaited him. He would not hide. He would not cower. He would ascend. He would carve his name into the bones of history, just as he had once before. Issei softly, with the voice of a king. Ryo. Issei. It matters not the name. The world will remember the strength. And with that, he began to walk forward, each step shaking the earth beneath him. The conqueror had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same again. If you want to see what happens next, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any updates. And hey, if you have friends who love what-if scenarios like this or are fans of anime like Anime Uchiha X, tell them about the channel. Let's grow this community and explore these stories together. Stay tuned for the next part of What If Issei Was the Reincarnation of Ryo, Fist of the North Star, and many more adventures to come.